uh, and say hello again. And Tima says hello in the chat. I don't know who is following from us the chat. Maybe you?
Yeah, 11 followers. Super nice.
Yes, hello to all.
Hello to all.
And I also updated the in Twitch by on the Twitch side the links I prepared maybe or we prepared for today. And for sure, but I think they are not linkable. So people, you have to copy it and put it in the URL. I had no time to write the markdown links. Only I posted it in the last 2 minutes. And yeah, but the idea was that we talk about the show and about the the show which is not, the show which has not happened.
Yeah.
But this is a nice thing on in one way that net.art is in the internet, and so we can watch it now in its own environment, in its own nature, and we have the possibility to walk through the show like on the Sunday or like on the Friday today, and see the pieces and get a tour by the artist.
Yeah, cool.
So maybe we start with this and then talk maybe about all the things around. Later, I'm sitting here on the on the mouse. I have the control, so you have to say if you would like to click something or how we start. So I prepared for sure your homepage, like Jan Robert Leegte, also leegte.org, where we see already here these more or less actual pieces from 2018, the repositions, the work we have planned to exhibit this April. So, and this is what we're talking about, or?
Yeah, totally.
So we start then with this first one.
The base work.
The base work, yes.
You want me to talk about it for a minute?
Like you, yeah, I think we should let it run and talk about this, yes?
Yeah, definitely. So Repositions is a series of works, and Repositions blue, black, and silver, and Repositions.work is the base work of the series, the white one. And the idea of them is, as you spoke prior to 7 o'clock, we briefly talked about the idea that I've been dealing with the last couple of years of the performative machine, the performative nature of the computer, and reinterpreting the whole interface as a performance, as a state of performance. And by looking at it that way, I can sort of reconsider the browser space as a performative place instead of a place of remediation, or other ways of looking at it. Mostly it uses a platform for remediation, but of course we do know it, especially in the form of the idea of the simulation. We're very aware of it also being a performative machine. So to create a pure performance work in the browser, and a very minimal one, I was trying to find the root of it. Let's make a document performance. So let's just take the document as it is. And when you arrive at the page, you just see a white page. So it's just a white HTML document. And let's start the page perform, or the document, to be more accurate. And so what happens is you arrive at the page. It's white. The page is adaptive, so whatever format you watch it, or on your telephone or iPad or whatever you have, it'll start as a white page, and starting from there, it will kilter and sort of twist as I formulate there, sort of taking poses. So the document starts taking poses, moving from one pose to the next in an endless fashion. So it's very much it's sort of an endless performance, very much with a start. So when the start is you arriving at the page and the piece starts performing endlessly. That was the idea, and it very much came from and that is something we talked also about, a very old lingering idea of wanting to revisit the famous wall floor positions of Bruce Nauman as a net artist, and then never actively was sort of looking for a solution. But I remember as an art school student in the 90s, I was very much a big fan of his. I mean, who wasn't? And I remember that piece especially, as it being so simple and direct in dealing with body and space, sort of very much working with body and space in the
One
now.
moment, I have to
Yeah, of course.
To interrupt because there's an echo. They say maybe this is because I have the computer on, and maybe I should use the headphones.
Okay, we can try that. I have the Twitch channel silent as the plan was.
I have it silent, yes, but sure, I have the Skype on. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Let us continue. Or is it?
Yeah, we don't want echoes. They suck. Let me try something as well.
Or I will check if I have somewhere headphones. One moment.
Yeah.
Really old ones.
Let me try again. Slow speaking. Anybody still hearing echoes? It's better now.
We have to wait also some seconds because of the
still echoes, so it's not my phone. It's worse.
Okay, then I will try the headphones. What is this? Is this our strange setup? But if I mute you on Skype, then we can't hear anything. I have these old headphones only. Or should I? No, I have also strange Bluetooth ones. Let me try the Bluetooth ones. Yeah.
Yep.
God, these technical problems. I thought we solved them in the beginning, but. Yeah. So could you say something?
Now I don't hear you. Yes.
Yeah, you hear me now?
I hear you. It's not as good quality anymore, but I hear you.
This is the quality now from the headphones. I can't switch them off.
It's
yes, it's better.
Yeah, it's better. We get a better. Echo's gone. Yeah, let's continue.
Okay, this was it.
Shall I recap a bit because they might have heard it badly?
Yeah.
Just a quick recap. I was just talking about how wall floor position of Bruce Nauman as an art student in the 90s, it always stuck with me as many of these classics, especially because it was my background is in architecture. So I always have an interest in this, in the bodily relatability, to relate bodily with a space. So I'm not so interested in sculptures you look at and just see as an object, but I like the participative element in the work. That's something which attracted me to net art in the first place. And Bruce Nauman had that very strongly. It was his body and the space in a very fundamental way, sort of exploring the relation between the two. So when I sort of really re-looked at the browser as a performative condition, I was very much interested in, well, first of all, needed to swap the actors because it's different context. So I was very much interested in seeing the document as the performer or the algorithm. And in this case, the space is different. It's the browser's space. So I took it quite literally. So the document is revisiting positions within the browser space. That's why I call the work repositions. So it's this endless positioning of the document within the space. Yeah, here we have the Bruce Nauman piece, 68, pretty ancient by now. And as you can see, he's sort of quite intuitive. He has a cycle of positions which he's running through, and he's doing them in all kinds of combinations. So there is a systematic behind it which he prepared, but it seems quite sort of intuitive, sort of relating to the space. And in a way that is exactly how you should read this document performance. So it's constantly sort of looking for a new setting in the frame. Then I have this deep sort of. I really like the medium specificity. I'm quite attracted to sort of looking at the browser space in a very specific way. As you said, it's not just as a remediation channel. I'm not interested in that, but to really sort of look at it for what it is. And so there's a lot of material tropes which have grown onto me over the last 20 years. It's like, so I made the 4 colors, which is the white one is the color of the document. In this case,
if I can interrupt before we go deeper in this, I had also an association to this from this white one. So I have I had some associations, but in special to the white one, if you go on the link list, really on the end there is for me is Kazimir Balevich, the white on white. The white on white work. I don't know if you know this. If you, for sure, you are familiar with it. And this was so close, and it was always fascinating for me. So I think after I saw the black one, for sure, then I was so surprised about these irregular, quadrangle, and this kind of It was kind also of flying. It was really dynamic. My whole mind was always trying to bring it in the right form, and that was reminding me that was a mind performance, I would say, on this too. Yeah, but here's it an algorithm what has happened. So the algorithm tries to position it, and here I would say this is the audience which is trying to position it, and through this it gets its own dynamic by looking on it, like white on white. A lot of art historians always talk then also about that he was taking in account or try to show the color, the materiality of the painting. So going back to the supremacy of the form. And so in this sense, it is very similar if you argue that you try to understand so the basics of the browser and the space from the internet, what you think what the space is like. It's a calculating data flow, you called it in your text. So that is a permanent data flow, and it is not like an hierarchical order where everything has its own space and place. So it is more or less in the network, a connected space of a lot of computers. They compute this kind of page we see here, which is always in flow and dynamic, as I understood it right. And so in this sense, this kind of flying square or quadrangle and this piece was for me like, wow, these are very close and I have to think about this. And then as we come now to the development, then I can also come up with in the links here is then also a red square and a black square. I don't know. I can put them.
Yeah, no, of course.
Nice. I will put them also here in the link before we go to your piece. We can watch them before, but you don't have a red one.
No, it's not a web native color.
So which one we should visit then as next?
Uh,
The black one, or
sure, black or blue.
yeah,
Doesn't really matter.
we make the blue. This is
no, it's really nice.
Nice moment. This is a so nice
Pardon?
moment if it is
The beginning.
the beginning. So because you think it's like yeah, it could be like Unendlich fast from Holger Friese, only a blue page.
And, yeah.
And then
it
falls
sets off and
it performs.
Yeah, and it keeps going. I must say that I really like that as well. There's also there's a lot of so I really see it also as a self choreographing element. So it definitely has an element of dance to it. I also in the source code have the comment strike a pose. So I also very much relate it to sort of modeling movement, which are sort of these endless sort of sets of poses which seem you can see it there at the top. If you're model in front of the camera, it's like this endless sequence of repositions of the body and the neck and the arm, and that also seems, if you would observe it sort of clinically, as a sort of nearly a randomized pattern of movements, but with a very strong dedication. That's why I also recognize some in this. I've also made a couple of versions of this as being there as a synchronized pas de deux, which was as an installation where two were sort of repositioning themselves endlessly, but at a certain point after 10 minutes they would go back to the original position and then fall out again.
Was it this installation in these halls? I think I also put it here on the link here, the clear obscure.
Yeah, well, that wasn't the double one, but there were definitely ones. There's a sort of translation into space where I found it interesting to have them come to the beginning stage after a specific time. And there you have it. There is already a key medium specificity of net art or web art, which differs from an installation piece. So where the net always has its own initiation moment, the person who arrives, and that is the start. And of course, when you have an installation piece in space, that's not the trigger. It's always running, and it is asynchronous with the visitor, and you have a completely different relationship with the audience. Therefore, I had to create a different way of sort of timing this movement. So I would have the piece start, and then after 10 minutes, sort of fall back to the original position, and then re-fall into a series of repositions again. And so I created a cycle, because otherwise nobody would ever see this beginning moment, which I find very important.
Me too, yes.
That would also be the suggestion for the show in the panke. So it would be a cycling movement.
But in the panke, we also were thinking that we give each color or each piece with its own day, like you have in a theater, that you have to come, and then we would switch then from one piece from one day in the opening to the next. So in the ideal situation, you had them to come 4 times.
Yeah,
and to see them all. And
I like that.
That was the idea. So because also I was thinking, the panke to show this is a little bit absurd on one hand, because it's so a specific web piece. It's made for the browser, as we talked about, and so it should have then more informed the theatrical aspect of the net. So
maybe it's a good moment to show the video walkthrough of the show Clear Obscure, so we can maybe see it in action in space. It's interesting because that would be sort of how panke would have
that was here
experienced. Yeah, I think. Oh no, it was on Vimeo. I sent you a Vimeo link.
The Vimeo link. I have to
Yeah.
check. Where is it? You made it here. Clear obscure video.
Yeah,
Yes.
there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I will post it one moment here in the chat. It's always a little bit with the mouse. I can't find it. No, I can't find it. So then we put it here. And
run it full screen.
Yes, sure.
Cool. So this was a show I did last summer here in Holland at the Kunstfort by Vijfhuizen, which is a space near Amsterdam. And here I wanted to show these works for the first time in a physical space. So at the back you can see the white Repositions.work piece, the minimal one. And the front two, I created two new ones using Google Maps. So I created it's interlaced with drawings I also did for that show, but we're talking about the projections right now. And so I had one with Google Maps in viewing the Pacific, and one viewing the sort of the Southeast China Himalayan area, and Tibet, and one that's this one. And at the back, I had the Repositions, the base work, the white one. And it's, I was really curious how this piece would work in space. I really was quite excited to see how it would relate, as it still has its browser border, of course, but it's become an architectural element. And sort of the context of the browser is gone, but of course, reintroducing Google Maps would inform the viewer that it was sort of related to the net. And then it becomes more this abstract dance. But there, of course, I had to sort of play with the idea of it cycling so that the visitors would see it coming back to the frame. It would just sort of completely coincide and become completely white, and then it would start falling again. And that was basically the beginning of our talks of, shall we do this in panke? Shall we just do the actual four original, the monochrome ones? Here we have it. The monochrome ones.
Yeah.
Running every day, a different color, cycle through the colors. And it's very nice because, of course, the piece is so dramatically monochrome, it'll change the whole space. Of course, the blue one will flush everything blue, and the black one will make it quite dark and sinister, and the gray one in between.
Silver.
Yeah, and the white one washes you away.
Yeah.
Which I think is really nice. And of course, as I was mentioning, it's also nostalgia, as being an artist active since the 90s on the net. I really have grown very fond of the white, the black, the hyperlink blue, and the silver, the chrome silver. Used to be the standard background color in the browser in the 90s, which I think around the turn of the millennium turned into white, or maybe even slightly early, but till late in the 90s it was silver, was the standard background color. But it's also the color of chrome. Your chrome is changing, but still, if I look at my Skype top bar, it still is silver, and it's the silver is even, it's quite nice. I mean, chrome, it's the ornaments, it's the carrier of your software, the interface. So it's also a color which I often refer to.
Yeah, so let us start the silver one to finish then with the black one after dramaturgy.
Yeah.
Yes, people maybe remind on the browser background now. Yeah, and for me, I have to say I see a little bit here in the chat that they talk about performance and code. Sure, that was always a big topic also in the beginning, writing from the writers or art historians thinking about what are these phenomena are, and always interface were a topic. And you wrote a lot about this in this text interface. How was it called? I forgot it already. Interface, surface, and face. And for me, like Inge Arndt and Florian Kramer, they really emphasized the point that code is performative, and they used a lot of terms from the language science, so where they try to explain that things are happen in the moment as the code is executed, and then these kinds of playing with performance and performance and performativity and these kinds of fine lines in between. I personally was always a little bit skeptic because I think that there are so many layers, and in the end, you wrote also something like the face and the software is interwoven, so there is not really, so the moment where it is executed or where it is, so its form and content is always in one moment together. So it is, you can't separate the interface from the software in the end.
Structurally, no.
Yeah, and
fundamentally not.
Fundamentally, I think, and I think also this whole idea that the code is executed, it's also somehow strange for me. But I think I don't want to go too deep into it. But for me, it was somehow it had more to do with translations and the question in which kind of layer or in which kind of position we are in relation to it. And for me, was it also an aesthetic question, more if I looked on websites, I have to say. It was not really a question about, is it code, what has happened there? Then it was really about, and that was also what I was inspired always in your works. It was for me always about the form and the question how it is positioned, how is the relation to the 2D screen, and what is the question how I can break it. And so these are classical questions for me from the art history. And also in the moment as we did it here, as we are talking about this, I made a screenshot. I think it should be, no, it is under it's under films here. And if you see here, can you see it?
Yeah.
The screenshot. Then you see here these kind of glitches, but these are cuts for me, because this is also like, again, like a cut in the surface with a glitch, and that reminds me on Luis Fontana. I already put this in the link here, only to show you the relations. I was really fascinated again.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Because I see in the comments, I see there's a question. Yeah, perfect.
This
about
let me add what finish it is a little bit because then the funny relation or coincident is this link afterwards to the Clear Obscure exhibition, and we talked this moment about the installation. He did then also an installation that was really early on Basel, where he tried also to make it big and to make it as an yeah, it was very close in the association to these kind of space installations to play with it. So, and for me, it was the whole that was only an insert in you. What you would like to say, please?
No, nice, very nice, well found. Now I saw in the comments that there was noted that performance include taking risks, and I think I agree partly. I think that is partly quite I would see that as and that is something which I think is slightly different when working with algorithms. That is a sort of, that's an egocentristic point of view in the arts. That's like a human performance. but I'm stating it more as a phenomenon. Sort of, there are performative environments, and you can say like everything is performative, but there's a big difference between a linear running video player and this algorithm. And this algorithm does take risks, as you just pointed out. It breaks, it glitches. I had a show, my last gallery show was 4 years ago, and I had like, I think 6 live net art pieces running on the wall. And a critic from a newspaper came in, and at that point there was a pipeline problem, and all the screens fell sort of 404 screens.
Classic.
And he wrote a really bad write-up. He said it was an amateuristic show. And I was like, yeah, I get your critics, but I thought also you're missing the point. That's actually, you are witnessing something very beautiful. It's actually the nakedness of the medium. It is a live performing piece.
Yes.
And it can break. That's what happens. And we used to be sort of annoyed with that, but I think it's essential about working with this performative medium.
Yes.
And I think that risk taking is also that's also in the machine. And it's not so that the risk is important. It's not like I don't care about that. It could be, but I don't really mind. I think it's intrinsic. It's because it's a live medium.
Yes.
That's why it breaks.
Medium.
Exactly. No, but that's my point. It's not so much that I intend it to break. I'm not a glitch artist, but there is a certain fragility, and I agree. But there's also this beauty of being in the now of the algorithm. But not even that. I think the computer doesn't do anything else. That is what a computer is, and I think we should embrace it. I find that very interesting as a maker to sort of really work with that. Another example is my scrollbarcompositions.com piece, which you were just referring to as a sort of formal composition within the browser. One should not forget it is adaptive to screen size. That is weird for a formal piece. It is transformative in time. When I made it in 2000, you can, I think it's down there somewhere, blue, the bottom right. When I made it, it looked completely different. You can see the different modes in time than it does now. And in the future, it'll probably go silent. So again, this net art piece is in a constant state of flux. It's transforming, and it's not transforming because look, in your browser it's died. So that's beautiful. Oh no, it's awoken again. So that is this, I think this sort of, and that's why it's always been interesting to relate it to land art as being a work which you put out in a field which actually erodes under the elements, but it's different. To relate it to performance art, which it has a relationship with, but it's different. And it's trying to coin exactly what the character is of this medium, I think, and there's so much being written about it and so much work being made, and we're getting a long way, but I still find it exciting and there's still so much space to be explored in really reading what the expression is of the machine.
But it's as you do it, it's not really like it's not so obvious, like working with this code in a sense that you then show the code and make it as a topic, the back and front, or talking about the interface, like as if the interface was hiding things or something. You talk always in your pieces, I think, in an aesthetic way. That is what I really I'm interested in, because it says this everything, but in its own I think formal way. So it has code and algorithm and space and dynamic and performance, interface, form, back and the behind and the front as a topic, but it's not. But for me on a really formal and visual way. So what I'm
well,
fascinated
I think I also wrote, I see another nice comment that the net art piece is not transforming, but its environment is changing. And I totally agree. That is, of course, what's happening. But
this is
the
coming
piece
back.
is part of the environment. It's not that they're separate things. The net art piece is part of its environment. So it's everything is transforming. So my piece is also transforming. That's my.
Yes, I think this is what we talked in the beginning about, that the stage, the browser as a stage, the interface as a stage, that you can't separate the interface from the software, that software and interface are interwoven more or less always, that like form and content. You have no content without form, you have no form without content. And these kind of things are were talked about. This text we talked earlier about Hans-Dieter Huber also. In Germany, he was writing about Jody, and then he's coming up with the stage idea, and then he's saying, yeah, you could understand code like a text, like a script for play, and then you have the play, and also if you have always the same play, every day it's different. Every moment it's an interpretation. It's really something. And this relation, the whole play could be in 100 years also complete different, but it's the same play. And not the text.
Yeah.
And not the text is everything. It's the content, and also not the artists. The actors are not everything. And so that means the buttons on the scroll bar. Yeah, you called them once also actors. The buttons on the stage here. They are not the piece. So all together is a piece, and then you have different interpretations in different times. The interesting for me, the interesting moment is that these interpretations are somehow not, as an author, you can't know them before. You can't imagine them before because they out of your realm. It's like you get an interpretation 200 years later. In our times, it can be 2 years later or 2 months later.
Goes super fast.
If the browser is changing, but this shows how the piece lives, how the pieces are live their own life. I would say that shows the power of good art pieces, that they change with the time, and that makes for me net art always also very interesting. Can the piece still exist in different environments or circumstances, I would say. So that was for me also this theater moment for me is really fruitful to describe the whole topic. And you also mentioned, I think, or this is the most iconic work is the Jody piece from the 20% location, where they had also the source code and the font as a topic. Where is a picture? Where is the image? Or what is an image? Can it be text? Could be text and image and so on. And
I use that as an example to. Yeah, sorry, you wanted to finish?
No, but still, I think this is really going one step into the materiality with a browser, like you do with a scroll bar piece, where the scroll bars become actors. But here in this is for me a little bit more abstract, in a sense that this has the whole topic by itself, but it plays with pure forms. So there is not really the code as material visible, or this is not the visual actor or so. It's in the background, but it's not the topic in the sense as an aesthetic moment. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I'm thinking loud here at the moment also. It's not so prepared in the sense, but yeah.
No, but I would like to talk about code, because I think that's interesting. You mentioned that. I think that's, to me, I often find there is a misjudgment in the position of code in works like these. And I think the Jody piece sort of proves my point. And that's why I use it in these texts I wrote. That often the code is seen, and often used to see it that way, but that is the instruction, is the score in which the script in which the theater is being performed. But what my point is that every sort of analogy of a previous medium you try and project onto this computer, it only covers half of it. It always fails. So if I talk about it as a performance machine and you relate it to performance art, there's a lot of stuff which sticks, but there's also stuff which breaks. And also if you look at it as land art or whatever medium or cinema, or and the same goes for the theater analogy. I like to use it, but I also deliberately try to use these analogies to find where it breaks, because that's sort of where the medium shows its uniqueness. And the script, I think, in Jody proves, because if you show the source of this page, page or Jody's page? Most doesn't matter. You just throw open the source. Then most people interpret that as being that is the code behind the page. That is the static original. That's what the computer sees or something. But that's completely untrue. It is a second performance. It is a performance in text. The source code literally is also just a web page. And of course, it's been instructed that way. But as I look a little deeper, sort of, if you really see the machine as being this, as you see, you have unexecuted code and executed code, and you're interfacing it with a text. This text gets converted into machine language, into assembly code. It still is all text. It's just a static bit of text. And once you press run, it transforms into these buzzing electrons and magnetic fields, which we back interpret into a visual. So this performance happens when you run, and as soon as you run, that text evaporates, it disappears, it becomes a complete different entity, a live running entity. The text was never live, it was a static thing. So when we look at the source code, like in Jody's piece, it's the second phase of the interface. It's the second performance. So you see two faces of the same piece. And that I find so beautiful about the piece. They're interchangeable. You can just mirror them, and there is no front and back. That's why I love the piece so much, because it really points out a specificity of a machine which is so unique, which is so different from a theatrical play.
But also for me, it was also or I don't know, I had also these kind of phases of misunderstanding, or I don't know, maybe still. But now I see the piece in the sense that often it was perceived as like, look, you can see behind the interface, and look how Jody breaks the interface. But as you said, now no, it's only a second layer. There are layers like on the onion, and that if you put them all away, the interfaces, then there's nothing left. So in the sense, the whole thing is an infinite amount of layers, and the source code is one of these layers, and you can go one layer behind, and you can have these kind of look behind the stage, so you have the view.
I wouldn't even see them as layers. They're on the same level.
On the same level, you see them.
They're different. Okay. It's a different execution. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's also right.
You're asking the program to stage the original source code in a different way. It's remediating that code, and of course, it's the same code as being typed. So of course, it has a strong relationship, but it's that buzzing machine doesn't see it at that point like that. And that's what you said. So that's also this interesting, the performative stage. I mean, of course, it's just all data which is being activated in this live situation, and it can turn into anything you like. Of course, that we know. Of course, that
but speaking about,
you could hear data or see it or whatever you want.
Yes. But but speaking about the interface and deconstructing it and taking a stand to it, these are the links you gave me. And there is on third place, there is our friend Constant with his iconic work, The Revolving Internet. And
yeah,
and I think this was also a bit about the interface, but a software as an interface. You could say an economic stack as an interface, understood. Yeah, the whole Google as the internet. Yeah, in the sense which he then with one simple script turned around. That was
yeah, it's super nice.
This is super funny also, and yeah, that was still on the so-called surface, but had so much more into it. It was for me in a way a comment, or it was also in the time where these kind of it is a kind of single web page where you have one thing. It's very close for sure on this, but this is more in a sense formal and more abstract, and has all these components we talked about. And also for me, it has these kind of artistic. I don't know the relation. I came up with a lot of relation to paintings already. So like Malevich and Fontana, and here's this drop shadow. Yeah, and in the one description of clear obscure, there is also a remark and the relation to the chiaroscuro. I can't speak. I can't name it.
Yeah,
but how you see it? There is written about that you see the pieces in relation to this kind of art historic.
No, that was the clear obscure, the last show. Yeah, it's just my interest in sort of this chiaroscuro technique. Had a very big success in sort of creating this suggestion of this sort of haptic illusion in a 2D space. So you have a lot of fake relief on buildings, for instance. Like I'm interested in sgraffito in the Alps, where they would just scratch in the white calcium and then bring out lines, or in and you would bring out. They would make simple drawings, and what they often would do is sort of make highlights and shadows, and just create sort of physical ornamentation, but then fake, because it was a lot cheaper. And you see that. So you see that technique applied, fake friezes and all kinds of fake fake ornaments on buildings. And it's quite nice because you see that technique being sort of appropriated in the 90s interface design as a very practical way of suggesting a sort of haptic illusion in the surface, in the plane of the UI.
Was it the skeuomorphism?
Pardon?
Was it the skeuomorphism?
Yes, but a very abstract. I mean, if you take the sort of the 90s interface, it was very minimal and very skeuomorphism sort of really tries to create a sort of realism, a realistic illusion, whereas the just using the chiaroscuro technique was just to suggest a sort of a depth and a sort of a difference in depth, and to sort of create this, as I call it, a haptic illusion. It felt like something you could touch. You create these buttons by just two white and two black lines on a gray background.
Yes.
So it was a highly efficient way of creating this graphic user interface. So I kind of like how way back that goes. This very simple technique of creating this popping up, this embossing, this idea of embossing this illusion.
Yes.
And it's very effective. I mean, we've been grown up with it, and it stages this idea of haptic sensibility. You want to touch the stuff, you want to click on them, and then it was a very successful way of working. So I often, in my old work, I was working with that a lot to sort of use that as a sculptural property and put these interface elements in space and see how they would survive as being objects of sort of sculptural objects. But that's I think that's what you wanted to talk about. Why the show was called that? Because that had to do with the drawings. I think we're sort of wandering off then. That was the drawing. So as I made the chiaroscuro drawings of buttons.
I know, but I think it was not so wrong for me. The whole thing here, this file gets its spacey appearance through a drop shadow. So I mean, without the light, light and the shadow composition, it wouldn't work. And
exactly.
And so in this sense, it is really related to the whole art historian questions of light and shadow and how you can form the illusion of a 3D object. And it was in the Renaissance times, it was one of the techniques where they experimented with and developed styles and which were expressions of the new worldview. And now we have these kind of everywhere, these kind of drop shadows in this way as we see them here. I think they are so typical for our times. So for also so web specific, I would say. I think in my perspective.
Yeah, totally.
Also, if I see here, that was a reason. Also, you said we present this on a classic background, the whole screen. You can see here that they also play with this element that it looks like it is flying. So I position an object, and so these are also the presentation we have now reflects also your piece more or less. We position here an object, a file in a file, and they play also with these kind of shadow moments and drop shadow effects to visualize this moment, to make it possible to show it, to interpret it. And this was what you what I was fascinated where you were thinking from your early works, I would say, about these relations, and this also for me aesthetic moments like here woodland button, for an example. Yeah, it's a really early piece. And we talked about all these already in our gallery surfing session years before, where we where we went through this. But I think now it's for me it's time to go to the black one.
Good idea. And everybody, after 12 hours of video conferencing, we need some brain calming.
Yes, and I think, this is clear as I spoke before about the red square and the white on white piece from Malevich. So this is for sure. Then the black square and the black piece. And
it's nice you brought that. Sorry, no, it's lovely you brought that to mind, because I was just thinking. I just recently released a video for the big show. What the hell? What the fuck? What was it? What the fuck? The hell?
Somehow.
By Lauren Mills and Faith Holland.
Yes.
And I was like a black square shadow. Mm-hmm. And I did a piece, black square embedded in social media. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
No, I remember. I remember.
Yes, really a literal pastiche of Malevich.
I really liked it. We already talked also about this. It's for me. It inspired me also for a piece I did by myself. It's really cool. I really like it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I loved doing this. Is the sketch version, the early 2013. If you go back, there's an executed version I did later. If you go, that one. No, higher maybe. Oh, is that it? No,
Yeah.
higher. There it is. In which I actually had 4 live social media context profiles of mine, and I posted all these bits of content to get the black square embedded within it, and I had it hanging up on the wall. And so this was completely live as well. So you would have people firing off comments and chats and opening them, and but that was a really weird experience of seeing Malevich Square sort of embodied in all this social media. Speaking of layers, that was a very confusing piece.
Was it 2017? No, that was after the Black Square was 100 years old. I think it's from the Black Square. From when was it? It's from 1915 or 1917? I don't know. Maybe
I don't know.
Yeah, but for me, the 15 it was. I already checked it here before. No, because I think that this is also reflecting on, or maybe it's an expression of your reflection or thinking about that we often forget that these pieces we see, they are combined by through different services. So the web page, what arrives here on my screen and starts to perform, or starts to appear, is a composition from data. They come from all over the world, and they are like a puzzle, like a permanent collage, I would say. There is no fixed file somewhere laying around and then it's shifted to me or something. No, it's a permanent, active way of
exactly
emerging. And
I think we spoke in the text. Yeah, sorry.
And expressing this, I think it's also that that these kind of fragmented, this more or less this kind of technique for me reflects also these times we are living where everything is in perspective and fragmented and has a very liquid appearance. And so this kind of fragmentation that was for me reflected in this piece where you also showed that it can appear all together or understood in a meta context, but it appears very disparate in separated small windows. Yeah. So and I liked it very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the fragility of it because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, you would put the windows together. It's like a puzzle. It's like, and it's a moment because it was running during the show, and
I wouldn't say this. It makes totally sense. I would say for me,
it's how the net feels. Yeah, definitely.
So I wouldn't argue like this. And I don't know. Then if you go a little bit further in time, then we have also this relation for
the gray monochrome.
No, the one early, because these were all works.
Yeah, of course.
All works. Right. They were like not moving. They were like on the screen. They were flat and they were paintings. And then this came, and maybe it was also parallel. But in this sense, the web has been always like a combination of everything, like of pictures, of text, of movies, of animation, and it has so like this it's kind of like the computer, like the universal medium, like the universal machine. So like everything could be translated into another thing or so. And so in this sense, I don't know, these were all these associations I had as I was thinking as we prepared the show about this. And here we can see for the end something.
I'll just quickly answer a question in the chat. There's a question if I think the black square embedded in social media. Did any platform change the CSS layout while the piece was installed? No, I was lucky. I think it was quite fragile, but it did stay secure. I do remember though, while I was making it, and of course also I had a sketch before and then revisiting, and of course the social media layout had drastically changed of some, so it did take some adaptation. But during the show, it was fine.
Yeah, I have here then the Oceans version, which we saw in the Clear Obscure installation.
Yeah.
This is then also sure. There were this time where Jody had also this map, and there was a lot of map works, I would say. But you had also it is always also topic in your work context, or these kind
I
like
think
with a cube sculpture, and here also the blue monochrome. And
blue monochrome 2008. Yeah, I think that was of course.
I think,
but it was also in the context of the show. I really wanted to bring in the landscape element. Also, the location of the show is sort of in the nature, and it was sort of also, and wanting to bring in the document because the context of the browser was gone. Then referring back to the blue monochrome, there was also there was a very binary element in the show of clear obscure and transparency in front and back, and how to deal with this. And so I chose the deepest point in the Pacific and the highest point on Earth in the Himalaya as sort of two opposing locations as documents. But that's all very specific for that show. That isn't relevant here. But
still, I know. But
it is interesting to see how an actual web document is performing instead of a pure abstract piece. But they're still sort of monochromes.
Yes. And for me, it's also I could relate it, or I was relating it back as I saw it to the revolving internet. So it was for me dealing with a major player on the net. So with a full stack. So like you could also now talk about like the perspective we get over maps, and the question how we represent world, and then how this shifts our perception and so on, but also how Google Maps shifted our perception. Yeah, I mean, as it is installed on every device now, and all these things were integrated in this moment as you used again this kind of unbelievable service. Yeah,
absolutely.
But I think, I don't know. Now we can let them dance here.
They're following each other.
But the question, I don't know if we should talk about this further. I think we are now on a moment where we could finish. But for me, there was this moment. You are part on the upstream gallery, and there was now the exhibition. So that was how we started questioning ourselves. Is there, or I was questioning, or I was talking about this, is there a special way to present these kind of works online, and how to do it, and because of their special materiality, and so is there a form how we can do it? Is this form we have now the right one, or is this a possibility? Sure, it's a possibility, but which kind of proposals are there we like? And there was this show in Upstream, and I wasn't there at the opening. You were there?
Yep. I know that is such a difficult debate, and thank God everybody engages with it, because it's an ongoing problem. How to curate within the net with net.art is, of course, this is based on a model derived by Constant, which was a temporary statelet, which was a gallery show. No, it wasn't a gallery show. It was an independent project in 2012, so it's 8 years ago. And they created this idea. Constant had the idea. I would love to see the web pages in one space next to each other in the browser. So let's make a page. Let's use iframes. But of course, the problem is then you have like all the sounds blending through each other. The page becomes way too heavy. You're you're in the meeting room. So he asked Jonas Lund, who helped out, and he created a script which would unload pages which weren't in the viewport. So it became lighter, and the sound issue was solved. Voila! So now we use this model again, but it's a matter of interpretation. So Constant's very happy in seeing it this way. I kind of like it too. I think it's really nice to see a running website sort of side by side in the browser context. But then I spoke with Dirk from Jody, and he's like, not for me. I just want links, hard links. And I think a page should only be viewed in its pure, natural, full browser experience. I spoke to Raphael about it, Raphael Rosendahl. He's no classic drop down, also just a list with links. So everybody has a very specific take on this. The other one just wants thumbnails. Yeah, it's also a bit impoverished, but you have to take it somewhere. And I think this is it's a nice experiment.
That was a point.
I think it will be way more interesting to see actually how it's going to be curated here, because that's, I think, way more important. So what choices are going to be made in showing work.
Yeah, but still, I was thinking in a moment to skip this part, but coming back, I see also again, we have here the same, the relation by it still in my association for the talk today because of the drop shadow and the positioning of the of the thing on the side. Yes, but for me it was a little bit I like the guys who did this, and I totally happy about that people take it so serious and try to exhibit net art so serious. But for me, it was a little bit kitschy to have the art to have the art piece like in a small teaser or what flying around on the net. So I would say it was. I don't know why I should see the art piece already like then. So I would also go with maybe a picture from it or a thumbnail or a link. Maybe the link is the best version. So also, I don't know. It's really hard. Cool. It's really hard to discuss because it's an old topic. I remember that I talked also today with Aaron about this, that I remembered that Constant was always also thinking about who to present the portfolio, because this is in the same medium, so that people not mistaken the portfolio for the piece, because it's in the same medium. But I don't know, here it becomes also like a postcard from a painting, from a Pollock painting. If you have then a postcard in a museum shop and you take it at home, it's a little bit kitschy.
Yeah, but this is the Harry Potter version. It's alive. It's a living postcard.
Yeah, but it's a little bit crazy. Yeah. So I was also surprised, but I was not interested to discuss so much about the design of the surface. Sure, it's important, but only because of the drop shadow. But for me, the meeting room, how it was working out, the whole meeting. What do you think? Is there a possibility? Can this be an alternative to
we're doing it now a bit, but it's okay. It has its own dynamics. To be honest, it was quite funny to see how it socially operates, because you have an opening and people join the meeting room and they're all sitting there in their little thumbnails staring at you, and you're staring at them, and because it's like, you remember the old-fashioned old school 50s. No, I wasn't from the 50s, of course, but I mean like a a more rural. That's why my family comes from. They're like farming families, and if they were like the conservative farming families, and if they would have a party, everybody would sit in this big circle, and they would have their cup of coffee and their bit of cake, and then they would just sort of. It would be really awkward because you're like facing everybody at once, and then somebody says something, and the rest is like, yeah, okay. And that is the same feeling. It just isn't natural because you don't have these one-on-one talks, and the rest are just chittering away. Everybody's staring at each other. So then one person goes in conversation with somebody, and the rest just listens, like we're doing now, but then with all the faces around.
Yes.
And that is a bit uncomfortable. So I must say, socially, we haven't tackled this problem yet.
That's right.
It should be way more dynamic. You should just be like in Second Life. You should just sort of crawl against somebody and chat and have a chat with 3 people. And but it'll come. So I think.
Yeah, but it will. In my experience now, it's not really close at the opening like in panke.gallery or so. Yeah, so I miss really this real space experience. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely, yes.
So I don't know how this will continue, but I think we had a real good tour, and in a way also a small show.
Thank you so much.
I thank you. I would say we cut this here and finish this
Thanks
moment.
for the lovely references. I love the what is it, the
Louis Fontana.
mushy brains. Fontana was great. That you found the glitch in Montana. That was super nice.
Yeah,
really cool.
Yeah, cool. Then I would say I try to stop here the streaming, and say also thank you to all the viewers. And
me too. Thanks a lot for coming and taking time. It's super nice of you.
Yeah. Inke Arndt was there. Thank you, Inke. Okay, I stop the stream.